Welcome to Beyond the Headlines, the place where we slow down the news, strip away the spin, and focus on what actually matters. I'm Morgan Reed. I want us to dive deep into the latest release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Tens of thousands of pages, hours of material, heavy redactions, and what they do and do not tell us about President Donald Trump. 30,000 pages, dozens of videos, and yet for many Americans the biggest questions remain unanswered. So why does Donald Trump's name keep appearing, sometimes clearly, sometimes ambiguously, in these files? And what should viewers make of it without falling into conspiracy or denial? This latest release includes roughly 30,000 pages of Epstein-related documents, many of them heavily redacted, along with dozens of video clips. Jeffrey Epstein, of course, was found dead in a New York federal jail in 2019. His death was officially ruled a suicide, a ruling that continues to face public skepticism but remains the government's conclusion. Among the newly released materials are emails, photographs, FBI tip-line reports, and video submissions, not all of them verified and not all deemed credible by investigators. So here's where we are. Trump's name appears in the Epstein files, but often indirectly, often without verification, and frequently alongside clear disclaimers from investigators. That doesn't mean the questions go away. It means they demand serious journalism. Not speculation, not partisan noise. And that's why right now, we're going to take you to a clip from Ari Melber's The Beat on MS Now, where Melber digs deeper into what these documents actually show and what the law requires next.
Thousands of new pages past the deadline. We've covered the illegal cover-up since most documents have not been met by the deadline. But what we have now are new emails, investigator notes, new witness accounts, as well as material that goes well beyond some of what was in the DOJ's first release. Before we get into any of the context and the wider legal ramifications, let me tell you highlights of what are in these files. New flight records, newly revealed prosecutor notes, documentation of Donald Trump traveling with Epstein to a degree that even the people inside the DOJ at the time, people with knowledge of the case, found to be a, quote, surprise. More jet travel with Epstein than they knew at the time. A subpoena that was sent to Mar-a-Lago during the Maxwell probe. It was seeking records. That itself is not completely incriminating for Mar-a-Lago, but it's new, and you could see why they wanted to hide it. Here's the Washington Post headline on what is now another day of Epstein file dumps. Quote, second batch of Epstein files with many mentions of Trump. Here's a conservative paper, The Examiner, that says some of the new files include Trump's name, which is putting it mildly, or Mediaite, which is read widely in East Coast media circles, the 5 most shocking Trump mentions in the latest batch of Epstein docs. This is shaking up D.C.
Overnight, under pressure, the Department of Justice releasing thousands more Jeffrey Epstein files, the most substantial dump of documents so far.
Tips about President Trump's degree of involvement with Jeffrey Epstein.
Then this email mentioning President Trump from a federal prosecutor.
On a flight that Trump and Epstein were on?
A flight that Trump and Epstein were on.
Would be 2 possible witnesses in a Maxwell case?
In a Maxwell criminal case.
This group includes an awful lot of references to Trump in the paperwork.
Reporters, other people interested, obviously the members of Congress who demanded this by law have been going through this. At MS Now, we had people burning the midnight oil, even though it is, of course, a holiday week, as they went through these files, trying to verify, trying to make sense of it. Again, we're going to go through these new documents that include that subpoena I mentioned. It was in 2021, pretty recent, that it was sent to Mar-a-Lago and was part of the open case against Maxwell. Of course, the investigations of Maxwell have traversed multiple administrations. There's a photo of Trump with her. We don't know the context of that, but there it is. There are emails from a federal prosecutor about Trump flying on the Epstein jet, writing Trump traveled on Epstein's private jet many more times than previously has been reported. That's Jan 2020. And they note Trump was listed as a passenger on 8 flights in the 90s, including 4 flights where Maxwell was also present. They noted in a flight in 93, Trump and Epstein were the only 2 listed passengers. On another, there were 3 passengers. The other individual, besides the deceased trafficker Epstein and the current President Trump, was a 20-year-old named Redacted. Now, you can see why a politician might not want any of that spilling out. On the other hand, those pieces of evidence, those references, do not in themselves implicate Donald Trump in a crime or wrongdoing. And that's important to note, given all the interest and some of the salacious details here. The files also have a letter that is purported to have been written by Epstein, so it's in these files, to a serial sex abuser, Larry Nassar. I want to tell you tonight, Trump's DOJ says that while the letter was in the files, right, the letters and emails in these files are not obviously automatically true. And we've had more disclosure than usual in this case. And one of the things we've mentioned, our guests have mentioned, is sometimes people think when something is overexposed, that means guilt by association. That's not always the case. Now, some of this was reported by 2023 by the AP, but not in the same detail. This is postmarked 3 days after Epstein's death, August 2019 there. MS Now hasn't confirmed the authenticity. So what I'm telling you is this is in the files. You may hear about it, but that doesn't mean that it's a true thing. Just as we've had past emails from Epstein and others making accusations about Trump. That is not itself criminal evidence of wrongdoing. It tells you about what's in some of these files. It might tell you about threats or blackmail that aren't based on the truth. And I want you to know the statement here, they've confirmed the alleged letter from Epstein to Nassar is, quote, fake, is what DOJ is saying tonight. Again, this is how transparency is supposed to work. Let the people see and add context. Some of these documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims made against Trump, they go on to say, discussing that as unfounded and false. Now, Trump's DOJ can, of course, add that context. What has been requested and now mandated under law is more information, not less. More documents, not hiding documents. And then you can add context. Now, the DOJ's handling of this release is peculiar. Those files posted yesterday were available for hours. Then they were removed at 8 p.m. Then they were reposted around midnight, which gives you an idea of what it's like to work at Trump's DOJ in this Christmas week. The files also reveal an email from an investigator who said they had a photo of Trump with Maxwell while searching Bannon's phone. Again, that's interesting to say the least. The investigator included the photo, but that was redacted. There was an uproar over the photos removed from the DOJ's website, which were also then restored. If you see from the headlines and the point here, this has been a bungled operation and at times an illegal cover-up. That's just the facts tonight. Now, one of the photos was inside Epstein's home and it had that Trump image as part of a personal collection. You see it there. Of all the things that have come out in this Epstein story, what you see the arrow pointing at is not exactly the worst thing for Donald Trump in terms of public embarrassment, and yet they took it down and then put it back up. Survivors have been speaking out.
I am no longer supporting this administration. I am so disgusted with this administration. I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel both need to resign, and I would love to see number 47 get impeached over this.
We went from, very happy, very excited, where we've reached somewhere to now being very disappointed. It's come to the point where we can't even trust our government.
Those are the voices of survivors. They can't trust their government even after they led a actual movement, I don't know what else you would call it, of survivors and their allies and others interested in truth in the story, as well as a bipartisan coalition in Congress. And that movement went from, hey, you're never going to see anything and get a vote, to forcing a vote, to forcing the president to sign that law because they already had a veto-proof majority. The voices of the survivors you hear have achieved a lot this year as we end in this odd Christmas week, this Epstein document dump week. They've achieved a lot. But you can see their work's not done. They're still pressing because what we're witnessing in real time, as we've been reporting since Friday night, is an illegal cover-up in plain sight, a bungled cover-up, problems with posting, taking down, reposting, redactions, putting up slices of material and then adding real-time tweets about it as if they haven't had all this time to prepare. And so what you see there is a DOJ and more widely a Trump administration under pressure. It doesn't look organized because it's not. It doesn't look honest because, as we've reported on the evidence, in many times and cases, it has not been honest. And the survivors and the Congress that has pushed this, they've made it clear they are not done with this administration, even if everyone takes a couple days off at the end of the year. I'm joined now by New York Times.
What Ari Melber just laid out underscores a larger truth. For years, Americans have been told to either ignore the Epstein story entirely or to believe everything about it without question. Neither approach serves democracy. I believe in something simpler and more uncomfortable: full transparency under the law. If documents exist, they should be released. If names appear, context should be provided. If claims are false, they should be clearly labeled as such. What we see in these files is not proof of Trump's guilt, but it is proof of proximity, social overlap, and unanswered questions that deserve daylight. And the same standard should apply to everyone: Democrats, Republicans, billionaires, presidents, and power brokers alike. Sunlight isn't partisan. Accountability isn't optional. Until every legally releasable Epstein document is made public, the story isn't over. I'm Morgan Reed, and this has been Beyond the Headlines. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay engaged. Like, subscribe, and share if you believe democracy works best when the truth isn't hidden behind redactions.